Welcome everyone to our presentations. We are Group 54 and today we're gonna talk about an energy currency which called the ATP and money currency. From that we'll find out the connections between them. Our group has 4 people, Yakhan, Ngọc Phương Linh, Daniel and Joshua. Now let's move to the table of contents. We will have the definitions, the ATP and ADP cycle, decentralizations of ATP and ATP functions as biological money, and gold standard as an energy currency analogy. Now let's move to the definitions.
So ATP, also known as adenosine triphosphate, is the energy source used and stored by cells. It was first discovered by Carl Lohmann in 1929. Every organism from plants to animals, bacteria, and fungi all rely on ATP for energy, so it's a common energy source among all organisms. So what is ATP made up of? Well, ATP is composed of adenine, ribose, and 3 phosphate groups. In order to release energy, it's broken down into ADP and pi, namely ADP as we commonly know. It serves as a decentralized energy currency in biological systems, which means it's created and functions independently. It also acts as a rechargeable battery because it stores and releases energy through the constant breaking and reforming of its phosphate bonds, much like a battery being charged and discharged. Look at the modern currency and understand what it is. So the role of modern currencies primarily function as a medium of exchange. It also serves as a store of value and unit of count. And these two functions are influenced by central authorities. This is what we call centralization as opposed to decentralization. So who's in control of the modern currency? Well, they're central banks. And the role of central banks is primarily to regulate the money supply as well as affecting prices, interest rates, and debt. And this central control may lead to inflation, financial crises, or even currency collapse.
And now let's move to the second part, the ATP, adenosine triphosphate, and ADP, adenosine diphosphate cycle. ATP is constantly being converted to ADP and back to ATP within cells. About the discharge process from ATP to ADP, when ATP is broken down, it loses a phosphate group, thus releasing energy. The energy is used for cellular processes like muscle contractions, protein synthesis, etc. And about a recharge process from ADP to ATP, ADP is converted back to ATP in mitochondria or chloroplasts in plants for future use. The energy to recharge comes from cellular processes like cellular respirations or photosynthesis. So the ATP-ADP cycle ensures energy stability and adaptability to an organism's need.
Decentralized nature of ATP-ADP. The ATP-ADP cycle is a decentralized mechanism in cells, allowing energy synthesis and consumption to take place locally within distinct areas and organelles without being regulated centrally. ATP is predominantly produced in mitochondria through cellular respiration, although it can also be produced in the cytocatabolism with glycolysis and in chloroplasts via photosynthesis. ATP is utilized in a variety of processes, including muscular contraction, ion transport, biosynthesis, and cell signaling. It is hydrolyzed to ADP and pi at the point of usage, avoiding long-distance transit. ADP and pi are converted back into ATP using local energy-generating mechanisms. The ATP-ADP cycle runs constantly in all active areas of the cell. Now, why decentralization is efficient? Well, firstly, it allows rapid response to localized energy demands. It reduces energy loss from long-distance ATP transport. And thirdly, it increases cellular adaptability in fluctuating environments. Now, to compare ATP with centralized money systems, we see that unlike modern monetary systems, ATP is decentralized, with no central bank controlling its supply. Each cell independently manages its ATP production and consumption, similar to a decentralized economy. This ensures an efficient energy exchange system. ATP function as biological money. Well, firstly, it acts as a medium of exchange. ATP is exchanged for energy within cells to power cellular functions. So how does it work? It donates a phosphate group to proteins or enzymes through phosphorylation, transferring energy to power reactions. This will help muscle contraction, where ATP binds to myosin for movement, active transport, where pumping ions across membranes like in neurons, protein synthesis, ribosomes use ATP to build proteins, and DNA replication, where enzymes require ATP to copy genetic material. It serves as the internal currency that is spent and earned in cellular transactions. Now, another function is store of value. ATP holds value in the form of potential energy that can be used later for cellular functions, like money saved for future purchases. In particular, ATP contains 3 phosphate groups. The bonds between them are high-energy bonds. When ATP breaks a phosphate bond, energy is released, and ATP becomes ADP, adenosine diphosphate. Cells recharge ADP back into ATP using energy from food, cellular respiration, or sunlight, photosynthesis in plants. Now, a third function of ATP as biological money is unit of account. So in an economy, all goods and services have a monetary value, like a cup of coffee costs $4.55, or a shirt costs $10, etc. Similarly, ATP serves as a universal unit to measure how much energy is required for different biological processes. Every cellular activity requires a specific amount of ATP, just like every product has a price. Breaking down glucose costs 2 ATP, but earns 36 ATP. Building a protein costs hundreds of ATP molecules. Transmitting a nerve signal costs many ATP molecules to maintain ion gradients. This allows cells to budget energy efficiently, just like people budget their money based on expenses.
Did the gold standard function like ATP? Under the gold standard, the value of the currency was directly tied to a physical commodity, gold, which provided a stable, universally accepted medium of exchange. Like ATP, the gold provided a store of value and unit of account and acted as an anchor for the financial system. However, unlike the decentralized production of ATP, the gold standard was centrally controlled. Gold's value is finite and constrained, unlike ATP, which is continuously produced and recycled. The gold standard was prone to supply shocks. Discovery of new gold or depletion of gold mines are examples of this, whereas ATP production is decentralized and self-sustaining within organisms. This raises the next question: can we create an ATP-like currency for human activities? Well, one of these features of an ATP-like currency is that it's decentralized and self-sustaining. So a currency like ATP can be efficiently produced and circulated across the system without a central authority. A system in which work or effort is directly converted into cash and can be made. It's also energy-backed. ATP stores biomechanical energy. A human currency could be backed by energy production. Examples consist of kilowatt hours of renewable energy. There's also a rapid turnover. ATP is constantly created and used. The currency should encourage circulation rather than hoarding. Example, expiration mechanisms or demurrage fees. Also, supply adjusts to demand. ATP is produced as cells need an ATP-like currency, which could dynamically adjust supply based on economic activity. The challenges of this is that its stability and adoption, unlike ATP, which is tightly regulated by enzymes, an economic currency needs robust mechanisms to prevent volatility. There's also scalability. A global ATP-like currency must work across diverse economies with different energy needs and outputs. And also the storage and transfer efficiency. ATP works well because it's instantly usable, and human economy would need extra ultra-fast transactions with minimal cost. The key takeaways of this is that an ATP serves as a decentralized energy currency in biological systems, functioning as a medium of exchange, store and value, and unit of account. Modern monetary systems, in contrast, tend to be centralized, with money supply controlled by central authorities. There's also a potential for transformation. The future of human monetary systems may benefit from integrating energy-based currencies or decentralized models inspired by ATP. And by learning from the efficiency and decentralization of biological systems like ATP, we could create more resilient and adaptive monetary systems. And these are our references. And thank you very much for joining our discussion.